Yeah, you got to be hustling. You can't stop. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Hustle, hustle, hustle. If you want to be like me, check out my car, look at my big house, look at my trophy wife. So say all the Instagram, TikTok and podcast bros and hustlers. Yeah, the hustle culture gets right on my... have you looked at the world of work lately and ever thought to yourself, has everyone gone completely bonkers? Everything I read about now about the work culture seems to 100% validate why I chose to retire early. Look, I'm not totally against the idea of a hustle, here and there, hustling for a bit of money, maybe to retire early or to be able to do what you want to do, to get a better work-life balance later in life. I get that. All noble pursuits. And as I say, it's a sign that you recognise the importance of a work-life balance. Somehow you hustle now to get there later. No, what I'm rallying against is the hustle culture becoming the corporate workplace norm, where it's not a short-term thing, to benefit you, but for the rest of your working life, to benefit the shareholder, the CEO, so they can buy another yacht or something, by strip mining your productivity and your soul. Phew, deep. I see headlines about modern day work culture and I talk to friends who are still in the thick of it and all of that. And it just feels like this whole thing is moving in a bizarre, almost unbelievable direction. Victorian industrial age workhouse vibes. And after everything that happened in the early 2020s with the pandemic and the mass enforced sort of work from home experiment, for a moment, there was like a glimmer of hope, wasn't there? It was as if the scales had been removed from our eyes and we suddenly thought, wait a minute, there's something to be had about a work-life balance. What the hell are we doing? See the Rozzers? They're after me. Anyway, there seemed to be a chance for a more flexible, more balanced way, a more human way of working. An acceptance of the work-life balance being an aspiration then, a dawn perhaps of a new employer-employee relationship. Wonderful. Well, that didn't last long, did it? I'm so glad I'm not starting on my first steps of a career right now. And I'm so relieved that I took early retirement. Why? Because today I'm doing a deep dive into some of the bonkers stuff that seems to be happening in the workplace and why it absolutely validates the choice to step back, retire early, or even decide your life is worth a lot more than that daily grind. Another windy day up here today. The pendulum of work-life balance isn't just returning to normal with all these return to the office kind of edicts from insecure and neurotic CEOs. It's swinging back with a vengeance. And the symbol of this new madness is a little something called 996. And no, that's not a Porsche. It stands for working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. That's a 72-hour work week. Yeah, let me just repeat that. A 72-hour work week. What the my back and butt just hurts thinking about that. This all started in China's tech scene and it became so notorious for its health impacts, mental, physical, you name it. So much so that even China's Supreme Court literally declared it illegal. When the Chinese government call out exploitation in the workplace, it has to be bad. They basically called it modern slavery. Yes. What idiot thought that would be a good idea? Too right they made it illegal. I'm glad we don't see that kind of nonsense in the West. Whew. Oh, but wait a minute. Step forward, Elon Musk and the alpha male tech bros. What does brilliant, forward-thinking Silicon Valley do? They start adopting it. Seriously. They're rebranding it as this kind of elite opt-in choice for the super ambitious. They'll offer you more money and more stock to basically sign your life away. But it just takes a little bit of quick, simple research and you see that this is all an illusion. It creates this intense pressure where if you don't opt in, you're seen as not a team player. Yeah, you're fired. Influential figures like former Google CEO Eric Schmidt have explicitly warned the US tech workers must sacrifice their work-life balance and match China's relentless schedule to remain competitive. This narrative skillfully reframes what would otherwise be seen as extreme overwork into some kind of patriotic or competitive necessity, a burden that must be shouldered to secure the technological dominance. This positions the 72-hour work week not as a choice, but as some kind of strategic imperative in a new Cold War fought with code and algorithms. Wow, yeah? When I was coming up, a 50-hour week was considered a real grind. We thought that was a lot. And maybe it was a one-off because you had like a major product launch that week or a show going live, but not constantly. I worked in the games industry 20 years ago, and 50-hour plus weeks when a game was coming up to kind of launch day were common in the game development industry and often written about. But as a regular thing, 52 weeks of the year, this is a whole other level. When I was a student, I worked in a hotel and it had loads and loads of bars, and I worked in the bars. And I remember one week they kind of hosted so many different events that you could do like a 90+ hour week. I did a 93-hour shift, sleeping on the floor of the bar while it was closed for a few hours. I mean, it was a sort of a rites of passage and a thing I could talk about years later. But I wouldn't do something like that every single week. Plus, it was £2.25 back then. Woohoo! Plus tips. It's going to be a climb up here. What we're being sold is a big lie, yeah? The whole idea that working these insane hours leads to better results is, and the science has proven this for decades, complete and utter nonsense. It's bravado, alpha male, Instagrammable hustle culture BS. And all the trimmings that come with that message, and then you can get a big house, and then you get a big car, and then you get the trophy wife, and that big watch, and all that kind of stuff. This mass consumerism, that actually traps us into continuing to work at that rate, just so we can afford all the stuff that hustle culture says is our reward. Consumerism is not a reward. It's a chain. It's our chains. There's a ton of research that clearly demonstrates that after about 50 hours a week, your productivity just falls off a cliff. You get tired, you make more mistakes, and you spend more time fixing those mistakes than you did producing anything new. So a 72-hour week, yeah, you're basically a zombie. Your brain is just not firing on all cylinders. Who decided to walk up this hill? And yet you have the idea of hustle culture painted on Instagram, the flagship tech bros. I mean, here's some fun quotes from the Silicon Valley industry leaders sounding like old Victorian age mill owners. So for instance, Elon Musk, nobody ever changed the world on 40 hours a week. N.R. Narayana Murthy, head of Infosys, he talked about 70 hours a week, working 70 hours a week to enhance India's national productivity and global competitiveness. That sparked a national debate in India about hustle culture versus worker well-being. And then you've got Jack Ma of Alibaba talking about a 72-hour week. He described it as a huge blessing and a privilege for those passionate about their careers. But who is benefiting? The employee or the owner, the shareholders? You might say, yeah, but Clive, I'm not in the tech industry or one of those big tech companies. The problem is, these companies often set the trend for other workplaces. And the CEOs become these sort of flag bearers for how a company should operate. And then you have these CEOs going on TED Talks and podcasts and talking to influencers and espousing this kind of work ethic. And that's the problem. It becomes the new corporate methodology adopted by the great and the good. There was a massive study done on tech workers during the pandemic, ironically enough, and they found that while people were working from home, the total number of hours they worked actually went up, okay? So contrary to what I said earlier, but their total output, the actual stuff they got done, went down. Why? Well, because they were spending all their time in endless meetings and on calls with no focus time to actually think about stuff. And that's what kind of hustle culture does. It gives you no time to think, no space or bandwidth to think and be creative. I mean, ultimately all this BS just proves a point that our generation, Generation X, the older people in life, learn the hard way. Being busy is not the same as being productive. It's about engagement, not about endurance. It's not an endurance competition. It's about the quality of the hours you put in, not the sheer quantity. And pushing people to the brink of exhaustion is just fundamentally bad business strategy, okay? Even if you forget about work-life balance, right? It has a negative impact on the corporate balance sheet. So yeah, the business case itself is really flawed. But what really hit me researching all this was the human cost. The research I've done looking into this lays out these clear evidence-based reasons why this hustle culture is ultimately so damaging. And reading them felt like ticking off a list of bullets I'm so glad I've dodged now. You know, especially that I'm not at the beginning of my career journey. First, there was your physical health, yeah? This one is a huge biggie for our demographic, the older you get. A huge study found that working 55 hours or more a week is linked to 35% higher risk of a stroke and 17% higher risk of dying from heart disease. Let that sink in. A 35% higher risk of stroke. These 996 schedules are pushing the 72 hours. The numbers glorified by some CEOs are 80 or 100 hours a week. You know, Elon Musk likes to brag that he sleeps in the office. That's not a work ethic. That's a health crisis waiting to happen. To be on this side of things, where my biggest stress is deciding whether to go for a walk up here in these hills or whether to finish a chapter of a nice book I'm reading, that is an absolute blessing. Second is damage to your relationships and your family. Time is finite, right? We all know that. If you're giving 72 hours to a job, that time is being stolen from your partner, your kids, your friends. You don't have to want to be with any of those, but at least one of them you want to spend time with. The research I've done clearly points to this really stark finding. When men work over 50 hours a week, their female partners report way higher stress levels and lower relationship quality. No sugar Sherlock. But get this, the reverse isn't necessarily true. It just shows how that stress just spills over and gets absorbed by the family and often disproportionately by the women in that relationship. When I used to commute, I was 2 hours in, 2 hours back, exhausted, and usually just in time to say hi to the kids before bedtime. That, of course, if the train wasn't late. I mean, I was lucky. I managed to wangle/trick my company into letting me work from home 2 days a week. This was before the pandemic. And I'm so glad I had, because it gave me more time with my kids. I remember seeing other guys who I knew caught the train at like 6 a.m. in the morning every single day. And sometimes if I was on a later train coming back, I'd see those same people 5 days a week. I used to think, when do you see your kids? Sure, you know, buy them nice things, but where's their dad? It works both ways. When my first kid was a baby, her mum had to commute out of London. We used to live in London. She commuted out of London. She left the house at 7 a.m. She came back about 7:30, 8 p.m, depending on traffic. Just as I was putting the kid into bed, I gave my kid breakfast. I took her to nursery. I picked her up. I put her to bed. The time I had with her was bliss, but her mum, too busy working. Not her fault. Just she had to work long hours. And third, it's about having a life outside of work. This hustle culture BS just hollows you out until your job is your entire identity. There's no time for hobbies, for community, for just being you. As you get older, you're like a coal mine that's been stripped of all its value and left abandoned, like those sort of slag heaps in northern towns. Life after 50 is supposed to be this incredible adventure where we finally have time to explore the other parts of ourselves. So to reduce a human being down to just their job title at work just feels like a waste of life. But the good news is you can see the backlash happening in real time, yeah? These aggressive return to office mandates you see, guess what? People aren't buying it. A huge majority, apparently 77% of them, believe it's not about productivity, it's about lack of trust from bosses who want to see them chained to a desk. Yeah, that presenteeism. Nothing to do with better work output or anything like that. My former employer tussled with the return to office sort of post-pandemic issue and said, oh, they did their research, they've consulted. That was all a facade, if we're brutally honest. And they basically decided that everyone has to do 2 to 3 days a week in the office. That's it, everybody. Now, I work for a big company with a vast variety of different job types. So it didn't matter what job you did, whether it needed more time in the office or could be done 100% remotely, didn't matter. Everybody the same, one size fits all, so there's no jealousy, like we're kids or something. She's got more time off than I've got. I mean, we're adults, for goodness sake. We should be able to judge where the best productivity is achieved. It just made no sense to me. In big organisations where I said there are 1,000 different types of jobs, that was just another nail in the coffin for work for me, to be honest. Some people love the office, and I absolutely get that. You know, great, knock yourself out, get in there, you know, enjoy it. Others, tended to be the older workforce that is, not so much. They found it easier to work at home, no distractions, no need for a 4-hour round commute or any of that, just to show a face in the office. I mean, even if I did go into the office, all the meetings were mandatorily still online. So it's like, what the hell am I doing in the office just to come to a meeting, which is online anyway? This rebellion against return to office mandates has led to my favourite term, which is coffee badging. And I must admit, I must have done this a couple of times. I did pop into the office, although I never quite went home. This is basically where employees show up to the office, swipe their badge to prove that they were there, go and grab a coffee, have a chat with a co-worker for a few minutes, and then, go straight home to actually get on with the work that needed doing. Almost 50% of employees with these mandates admit to doing this now and then. I mean, I never went home or anything because fortunately I had an off-peak rail ticket, so I had to wait until after 6:30 to go home anyway. But rest assured, I had a few conversations and a few trips to the coffee shop. But I think it's brilliant, coffee badging. It's this quiet, passive resistance. It's like grown-ups playing hooky from a place they know they don't need to be. It's all very Gen X and slacker generation to me. And it just shows the total disconnect between what corporations are demanding and what people actually need to live and work effectively. The world is splitting into two philosophies of work. On one side, you have this punishing 72-hour grind, which is sort of seen to be sort of patriotic or corporatotic, if that's such a thing. And it's just a burnout culture. And then on the other side, you've got things like the 4-day work week movement, which is proving with data that companies can be more productive and profitable by working fewer but more focused hours. Think about how many times hours are wasted in chats and stuff like that. Most people could probably compress all their actual work into 4 days if they cut out all the chit chat and nonsense. So yeah, look, researching this video, I don't feel depressed. I feel validated, grateful that I've had an opportunity to retire early. It's confirmed to me that choosing to step out of the race, you know, the rat race and all of that, whether you retire early, you've downshifted your career, or you're planning your exit, or whatever it isn't about giving up. No, I call it a profoundly rational act of self-preservation. It's choosing your health, it's choosing your family, it's choosing yourself. We've put in decades, we've paid our dues, and now we get to define productivity on our own terms. Maybe that's tending a garden, mentoring someone, learning a new skill, or just enjoying a quiet morning. That's not an escape, it feels like a victory. So yeah, the hustle culture dudes can do one. I'm all for just chilling. I'm really curious to hear what you think about that. Do you agree with me? Do you think life's gone a bit crazy and the pendulum swung to this hustle culture, 72-hour week kind of philosophy as being the norm? Put it in the comments down below. I'm always curious what people have to say. And if you like this video, then please hit the likes because I like it, YouTube likes it, and it helps people like you find content just like this. And if you're new to my channel, or as I say, one of the 83% of people who watch my stuff on a regular basis and haven't got round to it yet, please do me a favor. Could you hit the subscribe button, toggle the notification bell, and that way you'll know when I upload videos just like this. And talking of videos just like this, why don't you check out the videos here? These ones here. I think you might like them. Thanks for watching.